Three legends went up the same trail on the same day, over the same rocks, back to back. A Wrangler Rubicon, a Bronco Badlands, and a 4Runner TRD Pro. Everybody bet on the badge they trust, but one of them left the other two behind, and the gap was uglier than anyone guessed. For 15 years, I've guided rigs up the same nasty trail. I've watched drivers make it look easy, and I've watched them get winched off in front of a crowd. So when a buddy lined up all three of these at the trailhead on a cold morning, there was no chance I'd say no. I'll be straight with you first. This isn't a reliability test. It's a pure off-road test. One trail, one day. So it tilts a little against the truck that earns its trophies years later. Same weather, same tire pressure, same lines up the hard stuff. One steep rock garden, one off-camber climb that punishes anything stiff, one deep rutted stretch, and a water crossing at the bottom that's drowned trucks twice the price. I judged all three the same way, on four things, every single time. How far it flexes and keeps its tires on the dirt, what it does the second a tire lifts into the air, whether it clears the obstacle or hangs up on its own belly, and what happens down at the water, plus whatever broke or surprised me along the way. One of them walked the trail, while the other two fought it the whole way up. Let's get into it. First up is the Wrangler Rubicon. On paper, this thing is almost cheating. It's the only one of the three riding a solid axle at both ends, and that boring old setup still flexes further than anything fancier. Both axles carry TrueLock lockers, so one button locks all four tires together and they flat refuse to quit. It's got a front sway bar disconnect that drops the front wheels way down into a rut, and the rock track case gives it a 4-to-1 low range for a crawl ratio near 100-to-1, so it creeps over rock at a walking pace and never feels rushed. Flex first, because that's where the trail sorts the toys from the tools. On the off-camber climb, the exact spot that lifts a wheel on most rigs, the Rubicon kept all four tires mashed into the dirt. Sway bar unhooked, the front end drooped into every dip like the suspension had 6 extra inches nobody told me about. I kept waiting for a tire to spin free in the air. It never came. That was the cleanest flex I saw all day. Traction hardware is a whole other story. Up the rock garden I locked both diffs, and the Jeep stopped caring which tire had grip. One tire on a boulder, one tire in the air, didn't matter. All four turned together, and it climbed like the rock wasn't even there. This is the part most comparison videos skip right over. Almost anything can lock the rear axle. Locking the front one too is what turns a scary line into a boring one, and boring is exactly what you want 40 feet up a rock face with no signal. That crawl gear earns its own moment too. In low range on the 6-speed manual, you idle it over a truck-sized boulder at a crawl and feather every inch with your left foot. The Dana 44 axles under it are built like something off a work truck, which is why owners bolt on huge tires and never look back. It never once felt like I was rushing an obstacle, and rushing is how folks break stuff out here. Geometry came back just as clean. On 35-inch tires, it clears the ground by nearly 13 inches, with a 47-degree approach that's the best in the class. It nosed up the tall ledge that scraped everything else, and the front bumper never touched the rock. And this is the trick nobody mentions. You can pull the doors and roof clean off, so on a tight technical line, you lean out and set a tire on a rock within an inch. You can still get it with a stick shift too, which sounds old-fashioned until you're crawling, and that clutch hands you a kind of control an automatic only fakes. Nothing dragged, nothing hung up, nothing to flag. Down at the crossing, it's rated to wade about 34 inches, the deepest of the three, and it walked through without a single hiccup. You can even order it with a steel front bumper and an 8,000-pound winch, so if it ever did get stuck, it drags itself, or somebody else, right back out. This thing shows up to the trail already dressed for war. The one honest knock lands on the drive home, not the trail. That solid front axle that flexes so sweetly off-road makes the Wrangler wander and bounce on the highway, and the wind roar off those flat sides never shuts up. Out here on the rock, though, it was almost boring, and on a trail this mean, boring is a compliment. So the Jeep set the bar so high the other two had a real problem. The only question left was whether either of them had an answer. Ford built the Bronco Badlands to beat exactly this, and on paper, it sure seems to. The Badlands with the Sasquatch package gets the same trick the Jeep has: front and rear lockers, a front sway bar that disconnects, 35-inch tires, and a crawl ratio in the same ballpark. It's also loaded with tech the Jeep won't even offer. Trail Turn Assist grabs an inside rear brake to tighten your turn around a boulder. A camera shows you the rock you can't see over the hood, and there's a mode for every surface going. It even wraps you in marine-grade vinyl with a washout floor and drain plugs, so you hose the mud straight out of the cabin. Walk up to it and you'd swear this was the day the Jeep died. On traction, no complaints at all. Both lockers do their job, and up the rock garden the Bronco clawed through nearly as clean as the Jeep. That tech genuinely earns its keep. Trail Turn Assist spun it around a tight switchback the Wrangler had to 3-point through. Real point for the Bronco. And I want to be fair, because this is a seriously capable truck by any honest measure. It's got 7 drive modes for mud, sand, and rock, and the clever bit is you can bolt those same twin lockers onto almost any Bronco trim, not just the pricey one, so 2 lockers aren't stuck behind the top badge. Geometry held up too. 11.5 inches of clearance, a 43-degree approach, and it fords about 33 inches of water. It cleared the ledge, it crossed the creek, no drama either time. But this is the moment the badge on the fender stopped mattering. Flex. The Bronco runs an independent front suspension instead of a solid axle, and out here, that's the whole ball game. On that same off-camber climb where the Jeep kept 4 tires down, the Bronco's front end couldn't reach as deep into the dip. One front tire lifted off the dirt, spun in open air for a beat, and the truck hesitated right where the Jeep never blinked. The locker caught it and it kept moving, so it's not a fail, it's a gap. An independent front just can't drop a wheel as far as a solid axle can, no matter how much clever tech you bolt around it. And that's this whole test in one line. The Bronco wins with software and sensors. The Jeep wins with iron and geometry. On the rock, iron still breaks the tie, every single time. That same independent front is exactly why the Bronco is so much nicer to drive home, calmer and tighter on the highway, and if you daily your rig, that trade is worth every penny. Ford does build a monster that flexes and flies, the Raptor, but that one's a desert weapon made to jump at speed, not the rock crawler in this fight. So the Bronco came closer than I expected and still couldn't match the Flex, which left one truck at the trailhead, and it's the one half the mountain would have bet everything on. Real quick before that last truck, if you'd rather watch a rig get tested on rock than read a spec sheet off a brochure, the subscribe button keeps these coming. Now, back to the trail. Then there's the 4Runner TRD Pro. Say the word Toyota to anybody who wheels, and you'll hear one word back: unkillable. The truck that fires up on the coldest morning and never strands you 100 miles from pavement. Toyota built that name over decades of these things crossing whole continents and refusing to die. So I walked up to this one half expecting it to quietly embarrass the other two. On durability, it probably would. But this test was about the trail, and on the trail, this legend hides a soft spot nobody says out loud. Start with the hardware, because that's the real shock. The 4Runner has a locking rear differential, and that's the whole list. There's no front locker anywhere, not even one you can pay extra for. The Jeep and the Bronco both lock front and rear. The Toyota locks one end. It does get the new sway bar disconnect, which is a real upgrade, and it flexes better than any 4Runner before it, so it's far from helpless. Under the hood, it runs a turbo hybrid now, around 326 horsepower with a fat wall of torque down low, so it's never once hunting for grunt on a climb. But the second a front tire lifts with no locker to shove power across that axle, you lean on the brakes and a computer to fake grip, and faking it is always slower and clumsier than just locking the diff. Up the rock garden, that showed hard. The 4Runner made it, but it earned every foot. It scrabbled, it paused, the traction system buzzed and hunted for a bite, while the Jeep would have been long gone. It rides on a 33-inch tire, a 33-degree approach, and about 10 inches of clearance, every number a step under the other two, and it dragged its belly across the same ledge both of them cleared clean. To its credit, it flexes far better than the old one, thanks to that new sway bar disconnect, and the crawl control quietly does a ton of the work. That system feathers the throttle and brakes on its own, so you pull your feet off both pedals and just steer over the rock while the truck sorts the rest. It's one of the best driver aids built. The Overland-flavored version even ships with an onboard air compressor, so you air the tires down for the trail and pump them back up for the road without digging out a kit. But down at the water, this is the one truck Toyota won't even hand you a deep fording number for, and that's no accident. You don't point this one nose first into a river. On pure trail muscle, the truck everybody swears by came dead last. And yeah, I already know the Toyota crowd is loading up the comments to riot over that. Not because it's bad, not even close. Because the other two brought more hardware to a hardware fight. And loaded up, this thing stickers north of 70 grand, which stings when it just came third on the rock. But people forgive it anyway. They've watched one of these outlast 2 owners and 250,000 miles without a fuss, and that memory buys the Toyota a whole lot of grace. And when I add it all up, this 4Runner is the exact reason this isn't a simple test. Line all 3 up the way we actually ran them. The Wrangler flexed the furthest, locked both ends, cleared every obstacle, and forded the deepest. One clean run, bottom to top. The Bronco chased it hard. It only lost on flex, where an independent front can't drop a wheel like a solid axle. The 4Runner clawed through everything the trail threw at it, but with one locker and the lowest clearance, it worked twice as hard for the same patch of ground. 3 icons, 1 trail, and the gap ran wider than the badges will ever admit. None of them come cheap either. Spec any one the way it showed up to my trail, and you're staring at a $70,000 toy, so picking the right one matters more than the name on the grill. On off-road muscle alone, on these rocks, on this day, the Wrangler Rubicon is the clear winner. Not because the other two are weak, because when the trail turned truly mean, the Jeep is the only one that never once looked like it might get stuck. 2 solid axles, 2 lockers, and a sway bar that turns a wall into a ramp. Nothing else here has all 3, and out on the rock, all 3 is what wins. And for a lot of folks, the honest, smart buy is the one in the middle. The Bronco gives you most of the Jeep's trail muscle and hands back a far nicer daily drive, and most people spend way more time on pavement than on rock. But before any Jeep owner spikes the ball, there's one of these I'd take over the Wrangler in a heartbeat, and it's got nothing to do with the trail. Put me 50 miles past the last gas station, alone, with only one thing that matters, getting home, and I'm taking the 4Runner every single time. The Jeep will climb harder all day. The Toyota is the one I trust to just start, run, and go year after year, long after the other two sit at a shop waiting on parts. Most capable and most dependable aren't the same word, and anybody who's been stranded out there knows exactly which one they'd rather have. So it comes down to 2 questions. If it's which one crushes the trail, it's the Jeep, and it's not close. If it's which one I'd bet my walk home on, it's the Toyota, every time. And that's the straight answer nobody selling you one of these will ever give you. So what are you taking? The Wrangler that conquers the trail? The Bronco that does almost everything well? Or the 4Runner you trust to bring you home? Drop your pick in the comments. If you enjoyed this comparison, hit subscribe because we've got plenty more Jeep tests and comparisons coming every week. And if you want to keep watching, click the video on your screen right now. I think you'll really enjoy that one. I'll see you there.